Happy Saturday, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another media review here, courtesy of Manly Battleships. I'm Mr. Panda.
And I'm Roxstar.
And assuming that we caught your attention with any of the funny videos, we just did a really awesome one this past Wednesday. Welcome to the channel. We're talking today about Toy Story 4, which we just got out of at the time of this recording. And you will be pleased to know we're going to do our best to give you a spoiler-free account of what to expect and whether or not you should see the film. With that being said, let's jump into it. Toy Story 4 is the return of a major media franchise from Walt Disney and Pixar. You could say that we've been waiting in the wings for it, but honestly, I don't think anyone who sat down for Toy Story 3 was expecting them to come back to it. But I mean, hell, if Shrek can do it, why not Toy Story? If Shrek can do it, why not Toy Story? Based off of everything that we've seen in the teaser and the trailer coming through here, we knew a couple things going in. We knew that the majority of the main cast were coming back, including someone who was absent from Toy Story 3, Bo Peep. We also knew that we were going to be introduced to at least one new character, a mock-up toy named Forky, who, as I'm sure you could have guessed from the trailer, presents a lot of interesting existential questions about the world that Pixar has built around Toy Story.
I mean, not that previous movies didn't already kind of mess with our minds, but this one definitely goes into,
hubris! And the chaos of humanity playing God. That's what I was yelling at someone in the theater.
Alright, well, let's not be like other journalists and spoil this right at the very beginning.
Yeah, so, at least, what outlet was it? Don't go to Google this. You'll be very disappointed.
You want me to out the journal? Listen.
Yeah, they need to be shamed.
Listen, honestly, it's more than just, when I do, This Week in Geek, as you can tell from all the links we have down below, I go through various places. Den of Geek actually spoiled this for me. The worst part about it is, if anyone knows anything about Toy Story 4, it literally just dropped today. So I was spoiled on it Monday. I was spoiled on it before it came out on theaters. So I knew the ending before I walked in.
That being said, ha ha. Every time I say it, I'm going to ha-ha now. Do yourself a favor and don't go to Den of Geek if you want to at least have part of the movie spoiled for you, because, of course, they couldn't frame the headline any other way.
Yeah, it's literally the headline. So even if you're just looking for other articles in the movie section or even on the front page right now, it's right in the title.
Initial feelings. What did you expect to get out of this movie going into it?
I had no expectations for this movie. I don't know about you. I didn't expect the Toy Story 4. Toy Story 3 had a sufficiently good ending for me. It felt like it
a complete cycle.
Yeah, it closed the cycle. It was very nice. I don't know. I really didn't have any expectations going into this at all. I mean, I saw the trailers, and it wasn't that I wasn't hyped for it. I just kind of was like, okay, maybe this could be a good movie. I don't know what Pixar's doing anymore.
My impression from the teasers and the trailer was that it was going to be one of those, Lost in the Wilderness buddy flicks. The separation would happen really early on.
Like Beethoven? Oh no, maybe I'm thinking of those movies with those old 90 movies where the dogs got lost in the wilderness and had to go back to their owner.
Yes, like that. And actually, no, Beethoven's a decent comparison. I actually forget that the Beethoven series exists. But yes, like Beethoven, that works. And then, they'd build themselves up and then work back, and then everything else that we saw in the teaser would happen. I was a little miffed almost that certain parts that I thought were going to be the meat of the movie ended up being a very short part of it.
But I feel like they would have been working backwards then. Like, we've already seen those adventures before. Why would we go back after a feeling of completion to go retell the same story?
Well, I could say that about the movie regardless, because we already had our completion note. Why did we have to do this at all? Well, but, I mean, there are reasons for that, as you will find out when you watch the movie. But what I'm getting at is that they went for a simple approach, and it was a bit of a slow burn back into this is what I expect from the Toy Story franchise. I think it went over pretty well. Certainly the critics felt so. It's at 98% on Rotten Tomatoes right now at the time of this recording.
Critics?
Yeah.
That's pretty high.
Yeah, it was pretty high for me too, because I was like, I mean,
I'm not saying that doesn't deserve it. I'm not rating it yet, but that seems really high.
Is it warranted?
I enjoyed myself. The problem here for me is it's like, it's not a masterpiece. It's not like, oh my god, I need to go out and see this right away. But it's also not like it was so, it wasn't bad in any way. I enjoyed myself. I had a good few laughs. There were definitely some very inappropriate jokes that we could have made if there were not children present.
Of course, the children. They just ruin everything in this kids movie. Other highlights that you wouldn't be spoilery? If you hadn't heard, Keanu Reeves makes an appearance in the movie. It was low-key enough that Rockstar didn't even pick up on it.
No, I didn't. Not until afterwards. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess that was Keanu Reeves. I think all the new characters are actually really nice.
Okay, I'll give you that. All the new ones that get introduced, two of which we've already seen in the trailer, played by Key and Peele. Keanu Reeves' character, I can't remember who plays Forky. And then there's a couple of additional side characters, including a Polly Pocket-like stand-in who shows up. Mm-hmm. She was kind of fun. Oh, what are they? Combat Carl? You're going to really enjoy Combat Carl when Combat Carl shows up.
Oh, there was a lot of things that were enjoyable. It was the first time I realized that the sheep actually had names.
In fact,
I still don't even remember their names, though. We literally just came out of the theater. I don't remember their names.
Billy Goat Gruff. It's like a literary reference. Never mind. Other things we could talk about that aren't spoilery. Well, I already kind of alluded to the narrative and how it's structured. I thought it was interesting. There isn't really, and I don't think this is a spoiler, there isn't really a villain in this movie. And that's unusual because there has always been one in every movie prior to this.
I mean, I could be a real mean person and say there technically is a villain, but then again, I'm not.
Yes! We do not question God. God is just a force of nature. This movie will turn you into an atheist.
I don't know. The narrative
That's actually pretty funny. Oh, at least I think it's funny. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
No, people will understand it, I think, once they watch the movie. It's one of those that, maybe even without context, it's funny. But, I don't know, I felt like the narrative was an interesting story to tell. Maybe one that I'm very surprised they went the way they went in this storyline. And actually, it's one good reason to have this movie. I didn't know of a reason, like, why would you go and get a Toy Story 4? That was my expectations going in. Afterwards, I'm like, okay, I can understand the value of telling that story. But then it also raises serious questions about...
Are they going forward, is the question.
Right, it raises serious questions, not about just in worlds, not just because of, are they going to make a Toy Story 5, but the motivations of the other characters.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Because I'm going to tell you this much. The movie focuses on a couple's characters and spends the majority of the time on them. To the point where I was actually surprised. I'll be honest, I actually kind of knew where the movie was going very quickly. But that's because we've discussed this before with Brightburn. It's like, yeah, I can see this narrative a mile away. That's on me. But I thought it was almost, like, annoying at times because I felt like some of the other characters were just getting, like, lost. Mm-hmm. Including a character who, hitherto, has been very important and has basically just been pushed aside.
Well, see, I feel like I can't explain that correctly.
I'm not telling you who it is because I don't want you to kind of infer what the ending is while we're doing a non-spoiler video.
It just feels like some of the characters took a step back. Let's say that.
And and I think, in a way similar to another movie where we discussed this happening, where they made creative choices about who gets screen time, whose lines are featured more, who gets to talk, and who gets to leave the RV.
Well, I mean, it's Toy Story, so there are some staples of Toy Story in there. Like, I don't think it's a spoiler because it's in one of the trailers.
No, you're right.
People jumped out of the RV window. I mean, at this point, how many toys have just jumped out of a moving car?
Now, all the side characters do get a couple moments. Certainly not to the extent that they got in, say, Toy Story 2. I think that for me, the trouble when I was watching the film was trying to decide whether this movie was meant to be like an epilogue, like a final end cap to everything that they've accomplished with Toy Story, or if it was supposed to set up something new. And going forward, I don't know if like outside the movie canon if they've talked about it or what they want to do with the Toy Story franchise, if anything. I guess I was just surprised, having figured out where they were going with the story, that it wasn't kind of a grander end of things. Like you really felt it at the end of Toy Story 3 that like we're done here. And at 4, I guess I was just expecting to feel something similar again, and I didn't. So now, in my mind, like you said before, I have questions about what they want to do with the series going forward.
Well, I mean, it feels like they're leaving it muddied so that they could end it here and people would be, I mean, not as satisfied as Toy Story 3, but satisfied. Or leaving it open for, like, Toy Story 7 in space! Like... Obviously,
dude, that should totally be a thing. I would, like, even if it takes another 3 movies, I have to suffer through that franchise spam. Because, like, can you imagine Buzz Lightyear finally getting to space?
That would be
Spaceship! I mean, they did it in Lego Movie 2. Why not Toy Story, right?
Okay, and the other thing when it comes to it is, I think one of the reasons we feel that way is it kind of felt Lord of the Rings with that ending. Oh, here's another little mid-credit scene. Here's another little mid-credit scene. Here's another little mid-credit... And you're like, how many mid-credit scenes can you shove in here? Oh, there's an end-credit scene too? My God!
Actually, on that note, so just so you're aware, there are 4 mid-credit scenes, 1 end-credit scene, which is kind of more just like an Easter egg thing. Mm-hmm. It's not a canon scene of any kind. And for the first time in, like, a long time, there was no Pixar teaser short at the beginning. Yes. Mm-hmm. So I guess they're kind of like rewarding us a little bit, because I'm trying to remember here. I feel, well, no, because even A Bug's Life, like the whole lamp thing started out with that.
Well, I mean, and there's always been like just an animated short at the beginning of a Pixar film. Just not even a teaser. There was a decent one.
And actually, yeah, that reminds me, The Last Dinosaur. It's like, that was one of the most recent ones I watched. I was like, actually, I kind of like the short better than I like The Last Dinosaur.
I think the last short I watched was in front of The Incredibles 2 with that really weird dumpling.
Oh, the dumpling guy! Yeah. I remember that one. That was fun.
That was fun, but also weird, but fun.
At first, it was really weird.
Confusing.
Okay, so staying back on Toy Story 4 here for a moment. What else could we tell the audience about, you know what? Do they need to go see it?
I don't know. I'm kind of...
Are you a completionist? It's weird, too, because it's like there's nothing wrong with this movie.
No, there isn't.
At all. Except you didn't have to write it. I don't know. Like, I'm stuck here. There's nothing technically wrong with this film.
No.
Any fault that I find with the narrative is just me being like, oh, predictable. Whatever, you know, like, yeah.
Well, the problem is I can't even say if it was predictable or not because I already had it spoiled going in,
well,
so...
True. I definitely feel like my reference to it being more simplistic, for example, is probably accurate. I don't remember what the runtimes are like, but the story did not feel like super long, so
no, it didn't.
That was an advantage. Everything was clipping along pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
If anything, it felt comparable to the first Toy Story.
Yeah.
Actually, come to think of it, this is weird.
It feels like starting again.
And maybe that's on purpose, I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels a lot like what Disney did with Pirates of the Caribbean.
Ugh.
And I know people don't necessarily share my view on this, but for me, like Pirates of the Caribbean, it was like, the first one was really good, the second and the third were big, loud, and kind of weird. And then the fourth one came back in with mermaids, and I was like, this reminds me of the first movie. That's pretty cool. And Toy Story, to me, this felt like, yeah, the first one is a simple, straightforward little adventure story. Then we got racing down to the tarmac to catch a plane, like in Die Hard 2. Number 3, with the big old finale and the garbage pits and all that stuff. But then we go back to Toy Story 4, and it just feels like going back to the roots. So maybe that's what they were going for, they wanted to renew everything by just kind of kicking it in the same general direction, because a lot of people who went to see Toy Story 4, like if we're talking about the kids, they may or may not be that as familiar with the earlier Toy Story movies. I don't know.
I think people are going to have some unpopular opinions because of your Pirates of the Caribbean 4
It's
reference.
a similar comparison.
Not for people who actually enjoy Pirates of the Caribbean. That being said...
The second and the third one, I didn't say they were bad. I said they were big, loud, and weird. Fishmen are less believable than zombie pirates and mermaids. That will be the hill I die on.
I'm not saying that opinion. The whole opinion about Pirates of the Caribbean 4. It's renowned as trash. Complete and utter trash. It doesn't renew the series. We're not talking about Pirates of the Caribbean.
No, this isn't... You know what? Fine.
We're not talking about Pirates of the... I feel that the better comparison for me is... I don't know how much the kids would enjoy it. I think there's enough jokes and enough very beautiful visuals that keep the kids entertained. I think the problem with Toy Story 4 is the adult brain. Sometimes I feel like your brain can't turn off all the way during this movie because you're constantly thinking, well, why is Forky alive? Why is this happening? Well, what does this mean to the entire universe going on right now? So, you're enjoying yourself and enjoying the ride, you're also simultaneously in the back of your mind going, this is horrifying consequences for the Toy Story franchise right now.
What are you suggesting that adulthood's curse is the ability to ask existential questions about fictional universes? Oh, this movie is just terrifying in general.
Well, that's the problem, is I'm simultaneously enjoying it and terrified. And it's not just because of the accidental questions, it's because of that damn dummy, that ventriloquist dummy. They actually have, legit baby jump scares in this. They're training kids young, because there's some legit, tiny...
FNAF-like stuff going on there.
Yeah, with the ventriloquist dummies. And I was already creeped out of one of those things when I was a little kid, let alone animated. And, oh my god, I don't know what it was about how they animated it, but it just was...
The dummies were accurate, so if you don't like dummies, yeah, you're not going to like animated dummies. That's pretty straightforward.
Well, they have them jumping out of nowhere. They open the curtain. There they are.
So, in summation, I guess, because I feel like we talked about the movie.
I feel like we didn't tell them whether or not to go see it in theater.
I'm going to summarize what the things to look for if you decide to go. Watch for Keanu Reeves to show up. Watch for Combat Carl. Watch for all the fun things going on in that antique shop.
Oh my god, Forky was really good, and...
Try not to spend too much time thinking about your existential crisis.
The RV scene at the very end is also really good. I laughed a lot. I think I would recommend going to see this if you want to just have a movie this year where you turn off your brain, hopefully, and don't think about the existential questions, and have fun. It is a fun movie at the end of the day.
Does it serve the nostalgic trip? Is that a benefit of seeing the movie?
Well, if you ship Bo Peep and Woody, like I did, yeah. Yeah, it definitely... I got a little bit of that kick.
I would say then that if you're interested in indulging your Toy Story nostalgia with a decently written and solidly animated film, it is not groundbreaking cinema.
Yep, don't get your hopes up too high.
It will not change your view on life, but what...
That's debatable.
Okay, that's debatable. But I think it is interesting, and maybe, there's another demographic that we haven't talked about here that I didn't think about. Adults who watched original Toy Story.
You mean like me?
No, I'm saying adults, when that came out. Adults who watched original Toy Story, I think there is something there for you.
Yes.
In fact, if anything, if I had to think about it a little bit more, I would say that maybe that is kind of the undercurrent that they're kind of pushing into this film to let you know that what you knew, because you were an adult to begin with. It's like you were watching this with kids, maybe not. Maybe you have kids now. Actually, yeah. it almost certainly is for people
who
raised their kids on Toy Story.
Yep.
You know, all right, I'm going to give you some points here, Pixar. It took me a couple of minutes, a couple hours. The more I think about it, the more I see what you're doing here. So if you are an older fan who started out with your adulthood when the original Toy Story came out and wowed everybody, this movie has something pretty nice buried right there at the heart as the credits roll.
Yeah.
So, anything else to say?
I enjoyed this film. It's actually going to probably be at least an 8 on my scale. So
I don't scale things.
Oh, bull poop.
Bo poop. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, thank you and good night.
Bye-bye.